Nerds, I have Jesse Philippe from Tampa, Florida. He is running for U.S. Congress. He is a really interesting cat. This guy is a veteran lawyer, inclusive Christian, pro UBI. So we're going to get to know him in this interview. But first, we'll have Andrew warm us up.
There's no place to hide now that he's arrived. I'm saying he ain't playing now with this campaign. Bang, dang, it's and Drew, come roll with the gang gang. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up with. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up with. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up. Yo, there's no place to hide now that he's arrived. I'm saying he ain't playing now with this campaign. Bang, dang, it's and Drew, come roll with the gang gang.
Hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds.
Jesse, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thanks for asking, Tom.
I'm looking forward to this conversation, and I think I discovered you, or we connected on Twitter, and then you've got a profile on Of the People, so I said we got to get this guy into the nerd zone. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Jesse Philippe?
Well, Tom, you ask. I'm still trying to figure out myself every day. For me, what I am is a person that believes in people, who loves people. My love for people grew when at a very young age. I grew up. My mom was a single mom. My mom was a single mom, and she instilled a love for us, for people, in us when we were very young. She was out there, caring for people. She's a nurse, a practical nurse. And she put that instill in us to always love people and always respect, people and their beliefs and their different values. So, I grew up on that, so my mom was very active in our life. I played music all the way up till I was 17. And then that's when I learned the different styles of music, and I got to meet different people from different, backgrounds and stuff like that. And it allowed me to, open up my viewpoints of the world. I mean, so I took that to my adult life, and I was like, what can I do in my life to make an impact? And so for me, I decided to join the United States Marine Corps, and I did that for about 6 years. And I was in the Marines. I did a tour of Iraq, and I came back, and I was like, all right, that was crazy. So let's try something different. And so I just kept thinking, like, what can I do to give back? And so for me, I had the inspiration to go to law school, become a lawyer, and that was important to me because I got to learn, how to deal with people who doesn't have more than myself. I worked in like different organizations like Department of Children and Families, Metropolitan Ministries that deal with battered women, and also working on things like, Ronald McDonald House with kids who, had a late start, but they're going to make it. So for me, it's all been about giving back to people. So that's a little bit about myself. I'm always focused on what can I do to help my community. And so it's a little bit about me, Tom.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about life in the Marine Corps. I mean, a lot of us have only seen it in movies and stuff. And you get these visions of a hot summer in Paris Island and just crazy chaos in Iraq. Was it like that? I mean, what was it like?
The movies are movies sometimes.
Yeah.
The thing about Paris Island is true. It's really hot. It's in like South Carolina, and San Diego are like killer. And so that's true. Iraq is, it's a war zone, so it's not going to be, peachy. But, I did learn some things there. I got to learn, that this world is huge and so many people have different belief systems, and they just want to live their life, according to what they believe. And, and I was glad where we did there. We accomplished, we did a lot to make sure that we supported the Iraqi people. And for us, it's something that I loved because I got to learn so much about the world and understanding of how the world works.
Yeah, you must have served with people from all over the country. Was that kind of interesting, meeting Marines from, wherever, like Montana and LA or Seattle or all over?
Yeah, it was pretty
Yeah.
cool. I mean, there are different Marines. You know, we have California Marines, you know, big laid back, and then you have Texas Marines who says Texas is the best state in the whole entire union. And you know, Florida Marines were kind of like, you know, we just want to, you know, relax and chill. So yeah, you get to see different personalities, and that's what the Marines, you know, what was great about it. I got to meet so many different people and got to understand different perspectives. You know.
So you went to, after serving, sounds like you got a public policy as an undergrad in law, went to law school.
Yeah.
How did you decide to run for political office?
Well, I mean, I wasn't really a very political person growing up. You know, I knew to help people and give back to people. But for me, the kind of did it for me was like, you know, I went to school for public policy, so I learned how to do great policy.
Mm-hmm.
I still didn't have the connection with people that well. You know, I knew how to do it, but it wasn't something that, you know, I was like, yeah, I'm graduating college. I got all this student loan debt. I need to go make some money. You know, so it wasn't that battle cry yet. I was, you know, I went to work for office and working. I worked with Verizon, and one of the things that I learned there was I got to deal with different people from different economic backgrounds because the job I did there was people, you know, those people you call when you're ready to disconnect your cable service. I was one of those guys.
Oh, wow. You must have been really popular.
Yeah, right now. And so I got to talk to so many different people. That's why I loved about the job, because I got to, and they were all from different economic backgrounds. There was a conversation I had with a lady one time on the phone, and she was, you know, she was telling me, "Hey, I can't afford my service. I only can afford this amount because I'm on Social Security." And then I was like, "Well, I want to help you, but this, rules are rules." And she was just like, "Well, I can't, and all I have for my life is my cable because I have nothing to do. I'm at home, and all I have to watch is TV." And it touched me because I was like, "Man, I just imagine people going through this." And I started talking to people, and I started talking to my uh, close friend, mom and dad, who also was on Social Security. I started talking to other people who are on Social Security. And then I started diving in more into what Social Security is and how it's funded and stuff like that. And for me, I was like, man, this is really inefficient. Like, how can you have a program here designed to help, older age people, and they can't even live off it, and they've been paying into it for 20, 30 years. And it got me thinking, like, well, these people in 2050, we're paying for it. It's not going to be sustainable for us. So what we can do better than this. So for me, I started working and trying to come up with policies. And for me, that's what I was like. I started becoming interested in politics. I started studying more. I started understanding how the system works. And I was like, you know what? I saw AOC, right? And I was like, AOC did it. She was a bartender. And so I was like,
yeah,
involved. Let me see. Let me put my perspective out there. And so I took a shot. I ran for Congress, and we did really well the first time. And we figured, hey, we did a hell of a job, and we were spending, we were outspent 10-1. So let's try it again. So,
how close did you come the first time? What percent of the vote did you get?
I believe we got around 23% of the vote. Got 14,000 people who voted for us. And we spent $10,000 in marketing.
Yeah.
But we did really well for what we had,
And so, will you be running against the same opponent this time around?
Well, it was funny because I was in the primary, and the person that's an incumbent now was in the primary too, beat the incumbent. So it's a whole new race. It's us versus Scott Franklin, who's a and so it's going to be a different race, but our message is going to be the same because I think people really resonate with us and our message.
What is the core of the message?
The core of the message is people, the community. It's time for us to bring the local community back to Congress, because right now Congress have this big picture view of what America wants and how we should decide America's fate. But the community is disconnected from that message. Or the community wants the government to go a different way. They want progressive things to help their lives. They want universal health care. They want a program similar to UBI. They want these things because it helps build the middle class. And I feel like Congress right now is not really saying that. They're kind of just saying, let's keep the status quo and let's see what happens in the next 20, 30 years. And which is millennials, we don't want that. We want different. We want change. We want progression. We're different. So I think that's the message we're bringing.
What would be an example of something you've seen in Congress recently where you feel like it's clearly disconnected from the local communities?
Infrastructure. That's like right now. It's like, why are we having discussions about building roads and having sustainable internet for most of the country in rural areas? Like, that's retarded. There shouldn't even be a conversation, because the reality is most people, need infrastructure to get from work. Most people need the accessibility to internet because it's a common bill now. I mean, most people, it's not that you can, have a certain amount of money and you can afford internet. Reality is it's a necessity. It's electric bill. And so for us to be having a conversation or making it a political issue about, building an infrastructure plan when our infrastructure is from the 1950s and 1940s, and we have other countries surpassing us like China and Japan and South Korea in terms of infrastructure and high-speed rails, it's not in the conversation. So that's one of the things where we're at a very big disconnect, because Congress is saying, well, let's keep the status quo, let's reduce this. And the country is asking for an infrastructure bill because we're just so behind.
What's your take on how Biden is doing? It seems like he's pushing hard for this infra bill, and he's advocating for rural broadband and more improvements to kind of the fundamentals. And he's not shy to kind of put pretty bold budgets together. I also have heard people saying they feel like he's not moved far enough, and then of course on the conservative side they feel like he's gone way too far. What's your take?
I think that I did sales for, I worked at Verizon. I did sales, and one of the biggest things they teach you is to make sure you shoot high. And so I love the boldness of Biden, of going out there and say, hey, this is what we want. This is our ceiling. And we can negotiate, something reasonable. But I like that idea. It's like, hey, we don't go in our negotiation and be like, hey, let's give us like a very little bit of money so we can get this done. No, we go big or go home. And I think Biden has that approach. And I think that approach is effective because it gets plans through that are progressive. I know Biden gets a lot of grief because he's not, so, I guess aggressive with the message. But I like Biden because he's at least doing the progressive message. A lot of candidates in his years past have said, hey, we're progressive, and they did nothing once they got elected. He actually has passed things. He's actually passed the stimulus bill, which helped a lot of middle class, a lot of money. He's trying to pass infrastructure. These are the progressive things that we need to get passed to move the country forward. So I'm down for Biden for right now. He's doing what he can with that, that Republican rhetoric out there. They're just gonna slow him down.
Yeah. I'm kind of like a pro UBI, but I'm a moderate on many things, and I'm really impressed by how I think a lot of people were wondering, like, well, is he going to do anything different? And maybe is he just not Trump? And for me, that was already a plus.
Yeah.
But then to see him really push hard on the stimulus, the child tax credit, the infrastructure, like pushing hard on electric vehicles, like this guy's like, he doesn't like beat his chest a lot and like scream on Twitter every day, which I appreciate. Yeah. But he's making stuff happen.
Yeah, and he's doing. I was like you. I thought Biden was like, hey, he's not Trump. And, it's
yeah.
The thing about Trump was like, man, he was on TV every single day, and it was so. And Biden's not on TV every single day. When he's there, when he's on TV, he's talking about policies that helps the middle class. And that's kind of refreshing as a president to know that, hey, he's there working. He's not there just twittering, or tweeting.
Totally. Yeah. Tell me, there's a topic that, well, if you're running for Congress, you're going to have to be prepared to talk about some gnarly topics. So let me just throw out the immigration one because it will likely come up in, debate, and Congress will take a position on it.
Yeah.
What's your view on the state of immigration in the US?
Right now the state, it's bad. There's no way around it. I mean, we're an immigration country. I mean, our foundation is based on immigration. No one's here is, outside of Native Americans, native to the land. Where our country is based on that, and we have to find a pathway to citizenship, because I'm of the belief that when you have immigrants in the pot working towards one common goal, and that's democracy, that everyone wins. And for me, I'm 100% a supportive of a immigration bill that's, forward leaning and finding ways to make people inclusive. But I mean, piggyback on that too. I'm also, one of the few people who will say that we need to do a lot of work in Latin America, to make sure that we do, help Latin America so that we don't have an influx of immigration. But once, we do that and people do want to immigrate legally, that they have a pathway to become a citizen. And that's the most important thing to me. It's kind of two things we have to do. We have to first establish a pathway of citizenship, and second, we have to fix Latin America and the issues that are happening there to stop the influx of immigration.
What do you say to people who argue if there's a too easy of a pathway to citizenship that will only encourage more immigration, and at some point, the infrastructure and the country can't handle unlimited immigration? What are your thoughts on that?
I tell those people that, well, if you think that and you haven't been driving around America, there is plenty of infrastructure in America. I don't think we're ever run out of space here. I mean, I drove around Florida, and there's many parts of Florida. I was like, man, we can definitely do some development here, right? So that whole notion, that's to me, it's not based on anything. It's not even based on fact. The reality is, if you drive around America, there's plenty of space. There's plenty of ways to develop. I live in Riverview, outside of Tampa, and we have so much land that needs to be developed. So much infrastructure that needs to be built. That's why it's important that we pass one. So the reality is, like, people who say that immigrants are going to come here and we don't have place for them, we have no work for them, that's not true. I mean, it's like the immigrants that come here, they work hard. They fight. The reason why I'm passionate about it, my mother, she was an immigrant. She came here legally, but she had to work. She was like a CNA. I don't know if people don't know what that is, but the CNA is like a nursing assistant who helps, like, the elderly, or try to clean them and stuff like that. So she started at the bottom of the nursing career, and she's an immigrant, and she came up and she became a registered nurse, which is like the highest level for nurses. And so I see her story, and I see so many other stories out there in the country that they came there that it came legally as immigrants without the vast amount of education that you need to make it in America. Because that's another thing people don't talk about. Half these jobs and the qualification for them, people don't even have. She learned and she learned the language, English, and she learned the skill set she needed to become successful in America. And I feel like any immigrant can do that, and we have to give them that opportunity.
Yeah, you touched on education. You are the product of post Marine Corps undergrad and law school, and you talked about your mom, kind of moving up the ranks in the nursing profession. What changes do you think need to be made to kind of improve the state of education here?
Well, education needs. I'm one of the few people that I believe we need a national education. Right now, education's ran by the states individually, but I feel as if we need to nationalize education because the standards need to be set, and the standards need to be set so that people can get qualified jobs. Right now, there's a huge disconnection for the amount of degrees that are coming out that are not translating into job skills for people to get jobs. And for me, I feel as if that's happening because we've kind of let the states run the education system, and that's caused a lot of inequalities. A lot of these Googles, Apples, Facebooks, they have qualifications that doesn't even require a 4-year degree. That if you just take a couple classes in high school in programming, that you can start working immediately. And I believe that the national standards based on what job employers are looking for is the route we need to go, and moving towards a national education system, and I believe that's the way to do it.
Yeah, it's a topic that I find fascinating in that the things that people learn in their post-high school education, often in a college, they really haven't changed that much over the last maybe even 100 years. However, the skills and capabilities that companies are looking for have changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, why do you think, we could always spend more money in education and invest more there, but the actual product, the education experience seems like it needs to evolve as well. Why do you think it hasn't? Why do you think there are so many people still graduating with sports marketing degrees and $200,000 in debt?
I think that we've let education kind of run itself. Education is being run like a business nowadays. It's not really being run as a institution of learning. It's what brings me the most amount of revenue. If you look at a lot of the big schools, universities here in America, a lot of them are kind of backed by the football program or some kind of sports program, trying their best to make sure that that's okay. And it's, they're not putting much emphasis on, employable skills. They're putting emphasis on how do we bring in students, but once we bring them in, what are we doing at that point? A lot of universities are not answering that question. A lot of universities are just saying, we want students and we want the best and brightest. And we don't care essentially what after they graduate. And to me, it's like, we have to stop that. We have to stop trying to, bring in students, recruit students, but then when they leave the door, the universities don't really care. They're just kind of letting them out the door. And like you said, sports marketing, it's an option, but how many sports marketing jobs are out there?
Yeah.
There isn't many, and schools know that. And so if you have 168 universities offering sports marketing, 20 students are going through the program, there's not that many, of course, high employment rate. So it's just common sense. They just, it's all about profit for them at this point.
What would your bill look like to try and address education? What you mentioned that you think it should be there should be a national standard, or talk more about what specific policy changes you'd like to see.
Well, this is, in the early beginning stages, but for me, a policy that I would like to see is working with the top Fortune 500 companies, getting them in a room, deciding, hey, what is the skill sets that you need to be successful in your company? And using that to make the national education system based on that. So using this like a framework of, okay, we want our prospective employees to have these amount of skills. And we believe that these classes can offer these skills. I mean, when you look at Google and Apple, they're doing that now. They're recruiting out of high school, and they're trying to get people into the Google system early. And they're teaching them, this is what it's like to work at Google. These are the skill sets you need. And a lot of people are taking that route versus going to college. And so for a plan for me would be essentially start talking to the companies, the Fortune 500 companies, and asking, what are the skills that you need for not from here for 10 years from now, but the next 50 years, so that we can fix the pipeline going into the workforce.
Yeah. I have a question from the audience. Elizabeth wants to know how you feel about basic income, and maybe I'll tag on if you have any thoughts on Andrew Yang, since a lot of our audience is interested in that dude as well.
He's a good guy. Universal basic income, I like it. I mean, I love it actually, because what it does is it gets rid of all these rules, and says that, hey, you have to have this and you have this amount of money to survive, and then we'll provide welfare. You have this amount of money, then you'll get Social Security, disability. I feel like we should wipe all that out. Create a floor that, hey, this is the amount of money you're going to get in this month, so that you can take care of your household needs. I feel like it's doable. Like, if anyone ever says that UBI is not doable, I want them to look at the last year and how many stimulus we put out in the economy. Yeah, because the amount of money we put out in the economy is UBI. It's just they're calling it a stimulus bill, but it's providing a monthly payment to the American government and American people. And as you can see, one of the biggest things that people say, well, if you give people all this money every month, they're just going to waste it, or they're just not going to use it for bills. And what's funny is, if you look at the studies that from the stimulus bills that passed these past years, most people have used that money to pay their bills.
Right.
So that tells you right there a UBI program can work, and we just don't want to do it because we're falling into the rhetoric of not wanting to help or care about people, and just be like, hey, you can survive on your own because I did it. That's not necessarily the case. We know, like I said, we're a different generation. Our generation does not have the problems in the 1950s generation had. Our generation has to do with student loan debt, because we talked about earlier how they're pumping out, students, and their colleges are raising their rates. It's becoming a business, and people they're living with debt of $200,000. How can someone survive with $200,000 debt and trying to get a house? Because you're already negative $200,000 behind.
Yeah,
going to write you a loan to get you a house, and you can't start your life. It's like you're holding this generation back because we're not being creative of new ideas to help. And UBI is one of those ideas that I believe is awesome and that we should adopt, so it can help people get a jump start, especially this new generation of millennials. They're getting hurt the most by debt, and then no one wants to have that conversation.
So, like, let's say the stimulus spending that we've done in the last year now, a lot of it did go to the people. Most of it went to very, quote unquote, targeted programs, and they were for certain industries or for certain size companies. There are strong UBI advocates who would say, hey, that it would have been better off to give everybody, a $5,000 check or the equivalent.
Yeah.
And just have no weird, like, rules and requirements. And because, sometimes there are people that take advantage of those programs. And what's your thought on that? Like, are you in favor of a more kind of targeted program, which sometimes can, really be with the best intentions? Like, oh, I want to focus on single parents or parents who are really struggling, or kids or whatever. So there's always good reasons for it, or like, the airline industry, because it's like a national security thing, versus we're just going to take amount of money divided by the number of citizens and just send it out. Where do you fall on that debate?
On that debate, I believe in a progressive plan where it's almost like you should be phased out of the UBI program. I believe when you make a certain amount of money, you shouldn't have the UBI. I think the UBI should be for people who need it, like the middle class and the poor, and people less fortunate class. And once you get to a certain level, I mean, Yang plan says everyone. My plan is a little different, because my plan is, I believe if you're making $250,000 a year, there's no reason why you should have UBI. I believe that it should be focused on people income levels. It should be focused on, if you make a certain amount of income, you qualify. I don't believe in you have to be a single mom or you have to be a single parent. Or I believe that people who graduate college who are single with $200,000 debt is just in need for support, just like someone who has a child. I see no difference in that. I believe that your income should be the barometer as to what you should qualify for. So I believe in a modified version.
All right. Now let's double click into, for the people who are most economically in need, let's say, what's your take on spending the money towards targeted services for that specific group? Could be food assistance, could be specific subsidies of like heating oil, whatever, versus cash.
I think we've done that. Like, I think the government's been doing that. We've been doing subsidies programs since Lyndon B. Johnson. Just Lyndon B. Johnson came out with so many reforms. I think that the time is that we need to trust the American people, give them cash, dollars to make decisions what they believe is good for their family. I don't think that we need to keep doing these subsidized programs, because the subsidized programs, they're great, but guess what? They're subjective. There are people who have to execute those programs that you really have the control of. The government has to make decisions. It's better if we give the money to the people, and the people make the decision on how best to spend their money. And that's why I believe cash on hand is what people need.
All right. Let's move on to the next audience question. This one's about Medicare for all. What's your take on that?
I'm for Medicare for all. The reason why I'm for Medicare for all is because it's important. I mean, it's needed. My Medicare for all plan is a little bit different than most congressional candidates. I believe in a Medicare for all plan that's already existing within the VA system. I believe the VA system gives us that framework, because the VA is in every major city, to allow to set up a program where the hospitals can essentially start to build on Medicare for all, which will essentially give people low income the ability to access a hospital. So it's a Medicare for all plan, but it's already there. It's already coexisting already in the original VA framework, but instead of adding low income people into that framework.
Now, some people hearing that will say, "Oh my goodness, the VA has had struggles in the past with providing timely service, and if we add a bunch more people, then how will they possibly handle that?" What's your take?
I think that brings us full circle. What I believe, I think that our education system can pump out more doctors. That that's what I'm saying. These are the things that we need to gear, STEM technology, and get more people loving math and science, and creating more doctors, so that we can have more doctors to fund that, to essentially have that vision of using the VA. Because here's my thing. We can talk about, paying for insurance, but the reality is the insurance companies was what got us in this mess in the first place. When you have insurance companies who charge 2 or 3 times more than the actual services cost, and the doctors are running up their prices too, because they know the insurance company is going to pay for it, is the reason why we got in this mess, and why people have to pay high premiums, why people can't even afford insurance, which entails why people don't go to the hospital when they're sick. So I believe that we should take the insurance out of it. We already have a system in place with the VA that the government provides veterans for support. Now, we need to put in more doctors. We need to bring in more people who are just graduating medical school, incentivize them, like the state attorney's office. Most people, when they graduate law school, they go work for the state attorney or public defender's office to get experience. We can do the same thing by funneling doctors into the VA system and having people go to the VA as a way to provide support for them, and getting insurance companies out of it altogether.
All right. Thanks for that. We got another audience question. We're going to hit on some thorny ones. This one's been in the news a lot. Police reform.
Yeah.
What's your take?
My police reform is necessary. I mean, me being African American, it touched me a little bit more, because I have had those experiences with the police officers, bad and good. I was in the military, so for me, a lot of my friends, when they got out the Marine Corps, they became police officers. So I understand they're not bad people, because I deployed with these guys. I know them. What happens is there's two reasons why I believe that the police need to be reformed. One is a lack of training. A lot of police officers are not trained adequately. Like when I go out, and I went to Iraq, I had 6 months of training. A lot of these police officers are doing 3 months, and they're probably spending like a week on firearms training. So that's like the first big issue. It's just they're just not trained well. The second big issue is they're not representative of the community. You know, one of the biggest things that I see is that you don't see most police officers where they work, they don't actually live. So, for example, I live in Tampa. A police officer will actually live in Orlando. So he's not really from the community. And so, you know, he doesn't really understand or get a grip of what the community's like and, you know, how the characteristics of the community is. Because communities are different. I mean, you come to Tampa, people are more laid back. But if you go down to Miami, people are more aggressive. They're more fast. And, you know, so you don't understand. If you as a police officer don't understand the community that you're governing or you're policing, there's bound to be issues. You know, they're about and on top of that, a lack of not being trained, you're asking for problems and troubles. So police reform is something that's necessary. It's more of, for me, because I'm a federal candidate, how can the federal government help in this respects? It's by making sure that we're incentivizing local communities, you know, with programs and amount of money. Like, hey, if you had this amount of, you know, just like certain criteria, like if you have this amount of community support, we'll give you, and community support would be like out in the community, you know, going to schools, you know, support, you know, making your face present in the community, then we'll give you this amount of money for your police budget. I believe that I believe that a lot of people are motivated by money, and I believe that we incentivize this police force to do the reforms that it's necessary, then there'll be some big changes.
Yeah. So more reform, more training. That sounds like more money. A lot of progressives have been advocating for defunding or reallocating police budget. Where do you land on that one?
So I'm for reallocating police budget, not drastically, like most of my progressive counterparts. I believe that we need police. I mean, there's no way around it, you know. And defunding, using some of the police budget for focusing on mental health is 100% the right idea, but not drastically. I believe that if the police takes about 10-15% of their budget and focus on mental health, I believe that that's a fair number, because a lot of the issues that you're calling police to take care of are not police issues. They're mental health issues. And I believe that reallocation of the budget is extremely important. So that's what I believe. I don't believe in 100% of defunding the police. I believe in reallocation of the budget to focus on the needs of the community.
Right on. I tend to agree with you personally. I mean, I actually would be fine even increasing the salaries of police officers so that you can attract more talent, more diverse talent,
Yes.
invest more in upfront and continuous training, and really have a police department that is also like customer service focused and is not just thinking about locking people up, but really providing a service to the community.
Yeah.
But that's not how it currently looks in some places. Yeah. How is it? What's the state of policing like in the Tampa area? Is it kind of okay, or are you seeing the same stuff that we're seeing in other parts of the country?
You're saying the same stuff. It's not as bad as other parts of the country. You know, the Tampa police force, you know, it's doing their best that they can. But obviously, like I said, I think this is a systemic thing throughout the whole entire country, not just in Tampa. What, you know, the police are just not trained in community things. They're trained to be almost military people governing, you know, citizens. And that's not how you train a police officer. A police officer is not in a war zone. He's not dealing with people who are trying to kill him. He's dealing with people who are just trying to go about their lives. And the training is not in line with a lot of that community focused training. And so for me, I think that Tampa is just like every other major city. It's got to have a soul search. about how they want their police to conduct themselves in the community, and they're no different in any other city. So that's my take on it. I feel like if we continue to focus on what's good for our community, what do our community needs. I mean, what's great about Tampa is they do have these community boards.
Mm-hmm.
In the state attorney has a community board, and I believe Tampa Bay has a community board, and they're starting to have that conversation. I mean, the the social justice reforms that are happening right now, I'm pretty excited about. I think that there's a lot of people getting active in the conversation about how they want to see their police force in Tampa, and I think that a lot of cities are doing that, and that's the first step of the problem.
It's hard to talk about police reform and crime without also touching on violent crime, citizen on citizen crime.
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious, do you think there are opportunities to address, there are some cities where gun violence is really out of control, and how you think you get to the root cause of what's kind of driving this phenomenon?
For me, I believe the root cause is, I think violence comes from the home. It we just have to face the fact that in America, not everyone is raised in a 2-parent household. Not everyone's raised, have really good parents and stuff, as positive influences in their lives. Some children are raised in a violent household. They see their domestic violence from their father or their mother. Some children are raised in low income schools who have other children. They see other children who was raised in a aggressive household, and they adopt those, they mirror those personalities, and that's where I believe the violence comes from. I believe it comes from just your environment, and where when you see violence, you tend to mirror it because you think that's the way to act, or that's how the way you carry yourself, because you have no other positive influences. And for me to address the violence that's happening in the country, we have to be addressed things that are more deeper level things, like more after school programs, more mentorship programs, more things that focused on, I mean, for me, or the big thing for me, to have men back in the household. I mean, if you look at the minority community, most of the African American males are incarcerated because of crimes such as marijuana possession. We have to decriminalize marijuana charges, drugs offenses. I believe that that's how you get men back in the home, and some men, that to me is how you solve the violence issue and the crime issue. Is you have to start having, giving the parents support so that they can support their children and create and stop the bleeding. I mean, for me, what I mean by support, it doesn't necessarily need to be a 2-parent household. But if you look at a single mother who has to hold down 2 jobs to pay for her children to eat at night, well, guess what? What are their children doing while she's at work? If they have no babysitter, they have no after school.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are issues that UBI can solve. These are issues that a lot of policies that needs to be in place to help support people, to help, decrease the violence that are happening in major cities in America.
Well, Jesse, you sound like a really come across as a very grounded, kind of traveled, thoughtful guy, and I'd love to get more voices like yours into Congress. So I really hope the second time around you just double what you did last time. You'll be done.
This math, right? That's what.
Yeah. So tell me, are there any other topics or anything else you want to share with the audience, or how can folks help you out?
Yeah, you guys can help me out. Go to jessephilippe.com. donate, not only donate, but there's a section on my website that leaves comments. And I learned so much through that section. What happens is people like drop little things like, "Hey, listen to this guy," or "Hey, think of this policy," and I get to research and I get to learn more. And so those help. Any resource you guys can think of that can help address the problems that we're having as a country, I drop it in our inbox, and also on justfree.com. Donating helps. It's because I believe that, and I tell people on my team this all the time. What I am is I'm just a figurehead. The brains is the people in this campaign. The brains is going to be the American people decide where they want to go. I'm just a talking head. The reality is we control where we go as a country, the people. And so that's why I'm always suggesting people to, if you have a thought or anything, just chime in, let me know, because we're going to progress the country together. So.
Right on. So check out jessephilippe.com. Also, if you go on to ofthepeople.us and you favorite Jesse's profile, we are offering about $500 in prizes tomorrow to the top candidate. So if you favorite him and he moves up to the top 3, well, there's going to be money coming into Jesse's efforts. So I really want to thank you, Jesse, for spending time with us and talking really openly and thoughtfully about so many kind of touchy topics. But it's this kind of dialogue that you wish there was more of in Congress. You strike me. You know what I like about you is I think you could actually build some coalitions across the aisle because you don't come across as like too hardcore, like my way or the highway.
Yeah.
And that's great. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful if our congressional representatives could actually find a way to work together and get stuff done? So yeah, best of luck to you. We may have to get you back again. But in the meantime, good luck with the campaign. Give them hell out there, and goodbye, nerds.
Bye, nerds. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.